Greetings, communication scholars. Have you ever noticed how you change the way you talk depending on who you're with? Or wondered why you speak differently to your professor than to your best friend? It's not just about formality, it's a fascinating interplay of social cues and identity. You naturally adapt your language, tone, and even your humor to suit the situation. There's a name for this phenomenon, and it's called communication accommodation theory. Communication accommodation theory is basically the theory that explains how we adjust our communication style to match the person or people we're talking to. Now, this theory wasn't born overnight. It all started in the 1970s with a social psychologist named Howard Giles. He noticed how people naturally adjust or accommodate their speech, gestures, and even slang and accents depending on who you're talking to, and communication accommodation theory, or CAT, was born. But why do we do it? Well, CAT falls under the socio-psychological tradition because it considers both social factors and individual psychology. See, we navigate a social landscape, and how we communicate affects our social distance, how close or distant we feel to someone. To feel closer or to keep distance, we use different strategies. One is convergence, where we mimic the other person's style of speaking to feel closer to them. But sometimes we diverge or use divergence, emphasizing our differences, like a lawyer in a courtroom maintaining formality to maintain distance. It sometimes gets messy too, because there's over accommodation where we overdo it, which can feel like you're talking down to someone, or there's even counter accommodation where we intentionally push someone away by using harsh words. To really understand CAT, we need to look at the reasons we converge or diverge. Is it just about seeking approval? In the beginning, CAT focused on the desire for approval as the main reason for convergence. But what about situations where we want to be unique or represent our group? This is where social identity theory comes in. It tells us that we often see ourselves as part of groups, and our communication can reflect that. We might use it to strengthen our group ties and stand out from others. Our initial focus, either on ourselves or our group, influences our communication. Factors like culture, past experiences, and group dynamics shape this choice. When groups are salient, we might diverge, emphasizing differences. Seeking approval often leads to convergence, but sometimes both identities are important. Remember, how communication is perceived matters. Convergence might be seen as positive, but so could divergence depending on the context. So, while wanting to fit in explains convergence, social identity helps us understand divergence and group communication. Now that we understand what communication accommodation theory is, let's look at this theory in practical use. Here we have two medical journals that highlight the challenges healthcare professionals face and both propose CAT as a solution. The first article focuses on communicating with patients with dementia and argues that when dealing with dementia patients, we might want to converge by using simpler language and nonverbal cues to communicate more effectively. The second article talks about the importance of addressing social and emotional needs in older adults and also argues that healthcare workers adapt their communication style and to use simpler language and to speak calmly. By accommodating in both situations, healthcare workers can create a more comfortable environment, communicate more effectively, and improve care. These articles show us how CAT, applied in real life, can make a positive impact in a healthcare setting. Let's do a quick recap on what we've learned so far. Communication accommodation theory was developed in the 1970s by Howard Giles to help explain the way we change the way we speak depending on who we're talking to. But let's take a critical look at that theory. Cat suggests we adjust our communication styles based on social context, but is it really that simple? What about cultural differences? Different cultures converge in different ways. What about power imbalances? Power imbalances can affect convergence. The powerful might expect accommodation, while the less powerful might feel pressured to comply. And is CAT too focused on conscious choices? Is our communication always a conscious choice? What about implicit biases? While research supports CAT's basic principles, it might not explain all of these situations. Some argue that CAT oversimplifies human interactions. Perhaps we need to expand CAT to consider these variables. We can build on CAT by challenging the limitations, incorporating cultural nuances and individual differences, and work towards a better understanding of how we communicate with each other. We've explored the fascinating world of communication accommodation theory and its motivations, applications, and even its limitations. Remember, CAT offers a framework for understanding how we adjust our communication styles based on social context and identity. We learned about the desire for approval driving convergence, but also the pool of social identity leading to divergence. We saw how cultural context, past experiences, and even group dynamics shape our communication choices. It's not always a simple converge or diverge decision. We navigate a complex landscape of individual and group identities, seeking connection while maintaining uniqueness. And remember, CAT's reach extends far beyond academic theories. It has practical applications in diverse fields, from education and healthcare to conflict resolution and intercultural communication. CAT provides valuable insights, but there's always more to explore. How can we refine the theory to account for emerging technologies and diverse cultural contexts? Communication is dynamic, and so is CAT. So keep questioning, keep learning, and keep using the power of communication to connect and understand. Remember, effective communication is a key to a more connected world.